Welcome to the inaugural session of the brand shiny new CMX Connect virtual chapter just for community managers in the nonprofit and education space. Elijah and I kind of put this together recently. Elijah was the community manager up in Vancouver, BC, and I was the I don't know. I'm not the community manager, the CMX Connect host in Vancouver, BC, and I was trying my best to appear to be a CMX host in Seattle, Washington, and instead of doing something regional based, that we really should focus on something that was in the industries that we support. I work in both the nonprofit and the education space as the community manager for organization called Committee for Children. We make social emotional learning curriculum for schools across the United States and Canada. So we have a lot. So I do community management of community for educators that use our programs. Elijah, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Eli. Yeah, I was trying to get together with community nerds here in Vancouver. COVID kind of got in the way. And when I was connected into Matthew and found out that he was also in the civil society space, I'm super excited. I'm like, oh, I get to nerd out with people in my sector as opposed to community managers in gaming for whom I have, let's be frank, nothing in common. So that was super exciting for me to sort of have this opportunity. And I got super nervous about it until Matthew wisely said, let's not sweat it. Let's make it conversational. And I thought he was a genius. And so here we are.
So we just want to start off by letting everybody kind of introduce themselves and say hi for a little bit, and then we've got a topic this week that I'm sorry, I keep saying Elijah because that's what your name is on the screen. Eli has set up. So, Kat, do you want to pick up where you left off and introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure, happy to. On the nonprofit side, over here doing partnerships for our nonprofit called Tequeria. I'll share the link here if you guys want to follow up on us ever. But we're essentially serving to over 11,000 members in our Slack community here, Latinx professionals in tech, trying to offer them mentoring opportunities, career opportunities, community events, all of the above here. And just trying to learn a little bit from everyone here about how you guys keep your communities happy, engaged, and the onboarding topic was definitely one that I was excited to learn a little bit more about here in today's talk. One thing that we do at Tequeria for those that are doing introductions, we always popcorn over to someone so that it kind of carries over. So I'm happy to popcorn it over to my friend over here, Jasmine, who's also a part of Tequeria here.
Hi. Thank you. I actually noticed that I know a few names here, which I'm like feeling very warm and cuddly about. So I'm Jasmine. I am the marketing lead over at Tequeria, but a lot of the work that I kind of navigate is in community. And I do have a background in both nonprofits and education, so I felt like this would be a wonderful event. And I'm just kind of happy to be here. I can pop it over to Jessica. No, or not. Liz, I think from the last name, that was definitely a savage way for us to move forward.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited about this. So I work for a company called Teachstone. I've been the community manager, and now my title is program manager of our class community. Teachstone is a professional development company focused on early childhood ed mostly. And so we have an observation tool and offer sort of professional development based on classroom observations, and our whole mission is improving student-teacher interactions. And so our community—
I know you guys.
Oh, good. I know you. So the community are teachers, educators, leaders, coaches who are looking to improve classroom interactions. And our company is small enough that I'm sort of lots of different things. I do some content marketing and do our events and kind of a little bit of everything. And so looking to learn from all of you because I'm not an expert in any of those.
Cool. And who would you like to pop it to?
Oh, yeah. How about Elizabeth? Oh, except she was talking.
Sorry. I am currently at my job and I'm like about to go on my break. So I'm in East Coast time. Currently, I'm working as a group educator for the YMCA of Greater Boston. But prior to this, I was doing marketing and events for a company, working with the Ellie Fund and the Gloria Gemma Breast Cancer Foundations, putting together nonprofit events. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to learn from all of you professionals and see if, you know, there was any sort of advice that I could weigh in as well from my work with nonprofits and now currently being in a position working with kids and in education. So I'm definitely excited to see what sort of conversation we can all get started and learn from one another.
And who'd you like to pop it to today? If you can see that from your mobile screen.
Yes, I know, because my computer's video doesn't work. How about Taylor? Has Taylor gone?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Taylor. I work for a company called Apolitical, and we're a learning platform for civil servants kind of all around the world. So helping civil servants to learn from each other. Most of our platform is for kind of articles, people to submit for professional development, and policy areas as well to help people learn from each other. But we've recently launched kind of a learning platform side to it where we offer micro courses to civil servants on a range of topics. And we're trying to really create a community of those civil servants while they're taking the course and afterwards as well, so they can share resources and their lessons learned with each other. So I thought this was a kind of great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about how to really create a community that stays engaged with each other.
Sweet. Who do you want to pop it to?
Claire?
Hi, excuse me. I am Claire. I am based in San Francisco. I work for a company called Coursera, which is an edtech platform for courses from universities around the world. I manage the community and careers and technically localization. We call it the Learner Success Team, but my background is in community management. Community is still my main focus, but don't tell the rest of my team that. Well, we do a community lens through the other thing, like, you know, careers advice. There's a community element to that. Localization, we have a volunteer community who does translations for us as well. So there's community running through kind of all the aspects of my team. But we have a community for our learners, which has been focused around helping them support each other through taking the courses and through just using our very complicated platform. We're also just getting now into seeing if we can actually get some of our learners to create some, we're calling them guided projects, but they're very short, not really courses. So we're trying to investigate if we can actually use our community to generate those. And I don't think we're far away from community for our educators as well, but that isn't technically on our radar right now. So yeah, that's me. I guess who hasn't been yet? David.
My turn. Nice to meet everybody. I'm brand new to CMX, just found out about it a really a few weeks ago, I was talking to some folks at National Geographic, trying to hire a new capacity onto my team, and met some people who were officially community managers, and they turned me on to the nature of the job and the fact that CMX existed and lots of things. So I quickly posted an ad on CMX, and I jumped at the chance to join you all for this. And I'm just gratified to find that there's a group of folks focused on this. I work for a smallish non-for-profit called the Alliance for Decision Education. Previously, I've amplify and momentum. So I've been in education and ed tech for some time, and done work on network improvement communities and other things that I wanted to bring into this new company, and I wanted to find somebody to lead that up. And as I said, I'm gratified to find this group. I'm gonna put, very selfishly, I'm gonna put a link to my open job description in the chat. And if you all know anybody, because I just lost a great person to Duolingo like 2 days ago. I thought we had it in the camp. So I'm eager to get good applicants, but it's really great to meet everybody.
Cool.
Lovely. David, who do you want to pop it to?
Oh, I'm gonna pop it to Lou with his cool hat.
Hey everybody, I'm Lou Aducci. I am head of community experience for a platform called Tiltify. And so we allowed nonprofits, charities, and causes to fundraise. I think the interesting thing about our site is it really is driven by the fundraiser, by the community of people who want to make change and get that feeling that we all know is great for fundraisers to feel like they're really making an impact. I'm about 6 months into this role. Previously, I was at Children's Miracle Network Hospitals as head of community experience as well, and just really kind of launching that community and engaging that community to raise as much funds as they can through all those tools that we have. So I'm excited to be here. I just found out about CMX today. It suddenly was like a cool opportunity to chat. And I am also hiring a community manager, but I'm not. I don't have the link. It's not why I came here. It wasn't to poach somebody. But no, this is great. I'm excited to have this conversation. I thought it was a webinar. I didn't know we were going to be talking about ourselves. So
No, careful. We're going to put you on the spot, all of you.
Who hasn't gone yet?
I've got a list. I think Becky, Jessica, Pamela, and Jasmine.
All right, let's go Jasmine.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry. Losing track.
She's not on your list.
Yes, thank you.
I'm gonna go. I'll go. Hey, I am Caitlin. I am at Class Dojo. Yeah, I have some education experience. I actually was a teacher before starting our community and kind of getting it going. And so, yeah, CMX is like a huge, for those of you who are new, CMX is amazing. I feel like I've grown so much just in the years of like connecting with people, like follow as many people as you can and, steal all their ideas. I'm really glad I joined the Slack channel. So I'm just excited to be here and actually talk to others in education because I feel like our community is so unique and nonprofit. Like it's kind of like the same people want to make the world a better place. So
pop it on.
Popcorn to, have you gone yet?
No, I arrived very late, so sorry everybody. My previous call went way over. My name is Becky Margraf. I am based in Berlin and I work for a nonprofit called Peer-to-Peer University. We are, my job title is technically production lead, but there are 4 of us, so we wear a lot of hats. I currently manage our, we are a group that works with primarily libraries and other community organizations around the world to run free peer-based learning groups. We essentially adapt free online learning materials like online courses and open textbooks, and provide a framework to convert them into a multi-week study group to create access to learning materials that many people may not have due to literacy skills, whether it's language or digital literacy, tech access like computers or internet access at home, or any other forms of access barrier. And we collaborate primarily with libraries as the sort of hub and spoke to bring in their own the learning goals and needs of their communities, and then support them in a variety of programs. And they're traditionally entirely held in person, so it's been an interesting year of trying to adapt them to a virtual framework, especially because up until March of last year, I would say the bulk of the learning circles that we saw were all focused on digital literacy, which is very hard to teach on Zoom. So that's been an interesting challenge. I also started in April of 2020, so it's been a weird year to work for an in-person nonprofit. But my background is in self-guided and self-directed learning. I used to work for a company pretty close over to Class Judge, so it's nice to see those creatures in the background again. But it's nice to meet you all.
Welcome. Who would you like to pop it to?
I haven't the foggiest who hasn't gone. Can somebody like wave your hand if you haven't spoken yet?
Jessica, take it.
I see a Jessica hand. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, your audio is quite dampened. Can hear you, but just a little bit.
Mm.
Ooh, fun.
Cool.
Pamela, take it.
Oh.
Eee.
Cool.
I see we've got
I think
Scott off on mic. I don't know if you're able to come on and do a quick intro, but I think we're getting close to the end of the first round. Go for it.
Sure. Hey, so I run a community of practice for people that do customer support and customer success. And ramping up our volunteer programs is a priority for us this year as we've kind of moved online. We used to do a lot of conferences. That's not happening. And so one of the, so an example of one of the programs that we do is a mentoring program where we kind of pair volunteer mentors with mentees in our community. And so we want to really ramp that up and kind of do more. And so that's, so this, this meetup was super interesting because I feel like our onboarding is very lacking. And so looking to learn how to do that better.
and that's a great segue.
Sure. Why don't I just like bring us into this conversation? So thank you everyone for being part of this. So I want to just sort of have a bit of an open conversation just around onboarding. And to start that, why don't I show you the thing that keeps me up all night? So what I'm looking at here is basically my funnel as I onboard in new volunteers. So the work I do is I manage a community of community managers. There are these chapters which host Tech for Good workshops in their own community for nonprofit organizations. And so looking back, a couple quarters ago, this is the thing I spend so much of my time trying to figure out and optimize. So I had 37 applications from people who are interested. A good percentage of those people moved into my next phase of my onboarding cycle, which is just, will you actually get on a call and talk to me? Because that's my first barrier, which is to say, if you're not serious enough to have a conversation with me, you're not going to hold a conversation for other people in your community. So I put up a barrier. Awesome. And most people make it through that level, which is awesome. But from there, then I start taking them to the step to say, before you can launch a new group, I need you to, like sketch out the group. Like, what is your community going to look like? What are the topics going to be? And by the time, and they go through a couple phases in there, but by the time we actually get to group launches, I only actually, from that 37, end up with about 6 new groups, which for people who are mathematically inclined, is about 16% of my applicants actually end up getting to the end of my orientation funnel. That's the thing that makes me sad. And I'm always trying to futz with it to figure out, how do I make that process better? So that's kind of what my flow looks like. And I think the biggest changes I've made over the years is I've actually increased my barriers to entry in lots of ways. So it used to be, to start up a new group, I would say like, oh, just give me one event idea. Like, that's enough to start. And what I realized is I was creating a lot of new chapters, and then they would never do a second event at all. So from my perspective, for increasing my barriers to entry at the level of, give me some event ideas, sketch it out, while I have fewer groups actually ending up, they're lasting much longer. Now they're lasting on average about 2 years, Whereas before it averaged out to about 1 year, with a lot just being like one and done, which was a huge waste of my time around that. So that was one of my lessons there. The other tweak I've done around my orientation is I used to have a whole complicated application process. It would be all about like, you know, tell me your story, tell me your connections into the world. Like it asked you to put some real paragraphs in there and some real time and attention. And along the way, I decided like, that's not where I wanted my high barrier to entry. So right now, I'm using what I call the spaghetti method, which is to say I want to get a lot of spaghetti. I'm going to throw it all at the wall, and then I'm going to see which sticks. So I didn't put my high barrier at the beginning, but rather at my mid phase, which means I do a lot more orientation calls than I would rather like. But that's where I ended up. I'd love to hear from other people about their orientation process, what that looks like as you onboard people, and what you've learned as you went through that. Because for me, I think the real thing has always been about where do I put my barriers, and to be thoughtful about where my high barriers should be, but know that there should always be some high barriers.
Well, I mean, I'll jump in with kind of a poor example from myself, and then a really awesome example from somewhere else that I want to share. For me, one of the communities I run two communities. One of them is a private community for people who use our programs, and that one I don't really have to do a whole lot. It's a bunch of do-gooder educators, and I've been lucky so far that runs itself pretty well. But I also run a public Facebook group for anybody who's interested in the topic of social emotional learning. And that's also a really interesting group to come into, but I deal with a lot of spam. I deal with a lot of people who come into that space. Facebook makes it really easy to cross-post and mass post across a lot of different places. And people come in trying to sell their book or their whatever, sell a lot of stuff. And for a space that's non-commercial, it's a struggle. And so with that, I don't know if it really works great, but what we essentially do is anybody can come in and join, and I keep close tabs on the group, and I give everybody one chance. And as soon as you post spam, I use the Facebook moderation tools to delete the post and send you feedback saying that's it. And I stole something from CMX actually, which is we have a weekly thread. Whereas if you want to sell something, you post it right here in this thread, this one thread, Wednesday morning. And we redirect people to that. And it's actually worked fairly well in that I can tell at least I'm separating the people who care from the people who don't. Because the people who don't, they'll just post again, and I've got them on approval, and then I throw them out. But then there's other people who do actually pay attention and start putting it into that thread. And it's actually the surprising thing that's come out of that is that not only does it cut down on the quantity of spam posts in the group, but that one weekly thread is actually super duper popular and gets a lot of people seeing it. So I can then go back to people and say, you know, when you're selling stuff, you're actually more people see it when you post in this one weekly thread than if you just spam it out to a lot of different people. And it's been neat to see the culture slowly shift in that group so that people are to where that's becoming expected, and people when I forget to put the post up on a Wednesday, people go, where's the promo thread?
Because people want to show off, so give them a place to do it. But where it doesn't take over the rest of your community.
Right. And the example I wanted to share that's not me, that's a group that I'm just totally obsessed with, another Facebook group, I'm going to put it in the chat. Well, maybe I'll put it in the chat. It's called the Global Educator Collective. And they do just an amazing job of onboarding both general members when they come in. It's a huge Facebook group, like 130,000 members or something like that. And also they have a whole system for bringing on moderators as well. It's completely volunteer run. And the way that they use like the units tabs to kind of create places to people to go and regular posts to onboard people. It's so, they do a really slick job of it. I actually got a chance to interview the founder of it for my final CMX Seattle event a couple of months ago. And the way they described how they put it together was super slick. And also they were like, and if anybody's got questions about how we do it, we're happy to help and show people our onboarding process and how we bring on moderators and how they manage volunteers around the world. You know, they've got they're pretty awesome. I recommend you checking them out.
Cool. Matthew, so when you applied to that group, is it just like, boom, you're in? Or did they have like a whole bunch of questions as you came in? Like where was are there any barriers to entry in it?
Well, their big barrier to entry right now is that that no post goes up without approval. So, and because of that, they have to have a big team of moderators that are there 24 hours a day. Someone's online ready to approve posts. So that's so a lot of their onboarding in detail gets into how do they bring those moderators on, and they put together a playbook for the moderators, and they do training for the moderators. They have a separate group just for the moderators where they all get together and kind of coordinate who's going to be on when. So and they make sure that the moderators are all talking to each other when they have posts that have when tricky situations come up.
So I know we've got lots of people here in the educational world. I'd love to hear from people who maybe have built out some onboarding training resources. And what have you learned from that process?
We have a few different training resources. Our onboarding processes vary a lot depending on kind of which community you're getting into and what we're hoping to get back out of the community. But we have a global translator community of volunteers who translate the subtitles in our courses. And it's pretty easy to just become a translator. You just sign the agreement and you're in. But then within that community, we call them language coordinators, but they're essentially the super users who then coordinate the translations within their language. And so for those people, we have, a significantly higher barrier to entry. They have to have translated a certain number of words, shown themselves to be active members of the community, and then they have an application form. And then from there, we put them into a course. We're a platform for online courses. So we have used our platform to create a course that they go through that explains to them how to be a good language coordinator. And then if they pass that course, then they become a language coordinator. I mean, we found it to be pretty effective. We had a similar system as well for a mentor program that we've deprecated now, but people who had taken a course and then agreed to come back and help others take the course through posting in the discussion forums. And so very similar, we invited people who met our criteria to participate, and then they had to go through a training course that walked them through the roles and responsibilities of being a mentor, essentially best practices for community management, because they're managing and moderating forums. We had assessments in there, so they actually, because we operate everything at a very high scale, so we can't do manual reviews and stuff like that. So we relied on the course to give them the stamp of approval and say, yes, okay, I now trust you with moderation tools for these forums. And I mean, it worked pretty well in principle. Certainly the scale, a lot of people found the course really valuable, definitely helped them understand what the responsibilities were. Our actual system, I guess, is not reliable enough in terms of assessment. So there were a lot of people who got through the course just through, rushing through the course, who then went on to become mentors and either didn't post or didn't do a very good job, or they posted 3 times and then they quit. So I would say it was sort of 50% successful. It's the ideal scenario. And we're actually, we deprecated that whole program in favor of completely restructuring it. So instead of asking these people for a long, high intensity commitment, we're just framing it around, badges, status, trying to make it a much more lightweight, low touch thing, because it doesn't need to be this kind of high touch thing. And so people will just naturally rise up through the ranks and they'll earn their statuses, and it'll all be mostly automated. But then we have a new high touch program that we're launching right now for people we're hoping who will actually create projects for other people to take, which obviously is a big challenge. These people really need to put a lot of time and effort into creating them. And so I can't say that I really have learnings and advice from that, but it sounds pretty similar to the system you described, Eli. They have an application form. It's, I would say, a mid-weight application form. Most of the questions are pretty easy and straightforward, but then we do ask for like a longer paragraph that asks them why they want to do that. I feel like that's kind of, in general, one of the most important questions that helps you really understand, because if they are motivated, then they'll probably get all of the skills and everything in place. But if they can't give you a solid reason why they want to do it, or if they're like, I want money, then you're like, okay, no thanks.
You're like, yes, don't we all, but this might not be the right place.
Yeah. So yeah, we have an application form, and then there aren't really any barriers to entry, but actually creating a project is itself a huge barrier.
Sure. Honestly, asking people to have 3 sentences is a significant barrier to entry. To actually think of a reason, you'd be shocked. That would be enough to like get half the people to never even fill out your form.
Yeah, we are asking, we say write 2 to 3 paragraphs. And they don't necessarily write 2 to 3 paragraphs, but we ask them to.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So you've got a lot of these onboarding processes, and I think you were deeply disappointed with your 50% conversion rate, whereas I'm like if I can get 16%, I think it's a miracle. So it all depends, I guess, on where we're at. But your insight that some kinds of things were harder to do at the scale you're at without having a human actually do that interaction, like I think you're right. There's a danger there, and given that obviously your time is precious, it seems like you made the decision to say, for my high volume program, badges only, keep it light touch. But if it's high value, like these project creation, then it's worth staff time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Kind of. I mean, our high touch project program is like brand new. Like I've got 1 person who's done it so far. So for now, there's going to be some high touch components to it. But actually, down the road, again, we're hoping that one's going to be at huge scale, and we're going to have to take out any sort of human touch points along the way. I think actually, so one idea that we have, and maybe this is relevant to your group as well and others, but is a community for people who aren't in the community yet. So for us, we're thinking of an aspiring educators community. That's sort of our working title, but targeting this as an opportunity for people who would like to become some kind of educator, and giving them a space to talk generally about education and how they go about doing that, but then also to talk about, oh, I'm thinking of making a project. What does that entail? Have you done it? How does it work? And sort of help them learn more, which gets their expectations aligned. So then if it's not for them, they don't even apply in the first place. But then I think also to sort of socialize over time the idea of what's involved, so that when they do apply, they're already sort of interested and hooked, and so they stick it out. We haven't done it yet, so I can't tell you if it works, but that's the idea.
So Scott, I just want to follow up on one of the questions you had for me here in the chat around like, why did I move to spaghetti? And the answer is because, as someone who's been a volunteer manager, gosh, for like 15 years now, what I've learned is I have almost no ability to identify good candidates. Every time I think someone's going to be amazing, I'm totally wrong, and I invest all this time into like in training and getting those people up to speed, and then they disappear after like a day. So that for me, that was why I've decided, as I went through my work, to say I want to be really low barrier at the beginning, get all the spaghetti in my bucket, throw it at the wall, and see which of those stick. Frankly, because I don't know which one of those pieces of spaghetti are going to be super sticky ahead of time. So that's why I moved to that approach. And it's generally worked out well for me. It creates additional work in some like the initial onboarding phases. But the general approach I take is I invest almost no time into someone until they've actually shown serious commitment. In the same way I think I'm hearing from Claire as well, which is to say, you see who percolates up. So you say like, who's like got 6 different badges, who's really shown their deep commitment. And those are the only people I'm going to show my commitment to. So give them a really easy way in, but don't invest too much time in people at the beginning because you just don't know who's gonna step up, or at least I don't. And I'll show you again sort of what that looks like, because I think it takes me to the other part of this. So here's where I changed my approach. I could sort of diagrammed it out here. So you can sort of see here's the number of groups I was creating per year with my higher barrier to entry. And around, 20 FY15, I guess that must be 2014, I decided to say like, okay, let's lower those barriers. And so I changed my approach, which had 2 steps to it. So this is not a perfect scientific method, but what I did was, 1, reduce the barrier so I had way more applicants coming in. I could essentially double that. And then the other thing I did is I moved everyone into basically a sales model CRM. So I could actually directly track people at each step of their orientation. And through that, of course, then you can trigger all kinds of harassing reminder emails just to push people through the process. And so from my perspective, this to me said like, okay, maybe it was partially the CRM, but also like just scaling up and with my spaghetti approach worked really well for me in that case.
The spaghetti approaches that you've asked them to like put together an idea or an event, and then they go off and do it, or?
Yeah, well, so by spaghetti I mean the initial application is super accessible. It's really like, who are you? Show me your LinkedIn. Give me 3 sentences of why you think this will be an interesting position. And then, so that's my first thing. So I'm just like, any idiot can fill that out, and lots do. Thank goodness. And from there, then I start putting in barriers to say like, okay, my first barrier is, are you even gonna have a phone call? So that's the first thing. And if they can't even get a phone call with me, they're gonna get 3 harassing emails triggered by the CRM, and then I'm never gonna talk with them again. And then from there, from the phone call, now I give them the real challenge. I say like, now what I really want you to do is come up with, in my case, 3 events. And and everyone else can have different approaches, but for me, 3 events is what I settled on because it was enough to sort of launch a group from there. And I'd have a huge drop off at that point because frankly, that's a big ask. But what I learned is when it was a lower barrier at that point, one event, I was creating just way too many groups, which was a lot of work for me. And then I just had to shut those meetups down again, 3 months later, which was both expensive and time wasting. So that was where I came at that. So when I mean spaghetti, all I really mean is super low barrier at the beginning, higher barriers as you go through.
Super helpful, especially the part where you're asking them to plan events, because I can see that would scare off a lot of people.
That's terrifying. I don't have an easy entry community. I have a really hard barrier community. It's unique, I think, in some ways around that. It's basically like me having only project people like Claire's community has. So it's a little bit wonky and weird that way. Anyone else want to talk about their onboarding process? What I'd love to do actually, maybe if we could even diagram it out and sort of just look through the steps there and sort of see like what are the stages? Where is the difficulty on that onboarding? Anyone want to be the person who goes and wants to like walk through that process with us? And hopefully your process is not that complicated because you don't have too much time to diagram. So who's got like a 3-step process they want to talk through? Yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's which is fine. Yeah, talk us through. So like, what is the first step? And then the other part is where do you want it to end? Hmm. Right. So you're sort of segmenting them into the different channels that where they might play a role. Hmm. Right, right. So getting into the passion of the channel. Right. Okay. So everyone just they just come right through. So okay, there we go. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, sorry, can I go back to just the time part? Like, so are you bringing people into cohorts so they do things together? Like, what's the time gap there? Right. And so the process is, and this is a weekly meeting you were saying? Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Right.
usually the immediate needs that we have within the community, and some of
Totally.
the other barriers I've experienced because I was a volunteer at first. I rose my hand saying, "Hey, I want to help out with your virtual summit," and the barrier was just letting them know on their volunteer Slack channel. Anyone can be a part of their Slack channel and chime in, say, hey, I want to volunteer. And then they set up a call with you and make you apply. Some other barriers were signing an NDA and doing a little bit more of a follow up. So we try to ensure that there's someone that has been familiar with our community, has at least 6 months in our community, in our Slack community, and they've been in there for 6 months. They signed an NDA. They identify as Latinx or they're an ally. So there are some things that we require for volunteers before we kind of accept them officially here.
Right. Okay. So there is some barriers in here just to say like, how engaged are you? So, going through signing an NDA
Yes.
definitely is a barrier there.
Yes, we definitely want to get them, make sure that they're a person of the community that wants to help out, give back to the community here. But to say that we have the smoothest onboarding process is not the not the clearest picture here.
Could you? When did you feel that? Where in this process did that feeling happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Once you were in, you could see that they were busy. Right.
You saw the chaos that was happening. So to give some context in our nonprofit, most of it is volunteer driven. We have, I think, 1 to 2 people that are full time, and those are our executive directors. But everyone else, it's volunteer driven. So people like myself that do partnerships, Jasmine, marketing. We have one person that does our events. We've all had the experience of being tossed into the fires that we're being asked to put out in there. So Jasmine and I have been slacking back and forth during this entire call saying we need a playbook, we need to do some of these things like that you guys were mentioning throughout this call. So seeing this in our face right now is almost saying, oh, how can we make this much smoother? So really your guys' tips here have been really heard, and we're taking them into account here on mine and Jasmine's end for our Decadia community.
You're like, that's normal. Right.
That's the question that I saw Scott post in here. How do you keep your volunteers from feeling intimidated or overwhelmed? That one definitely helped paint this picture that me and Jasmine are trying to not have in the future when we
Right.
onboard more volunteers here.
Yeah. That's really helpful. I just want to say we're at like 2 minutes, but I want to go deep into this. Yeah, so when I look at this, I see that a couple times time gaps or where you're losing people. And certainly in my experience as a volunteer manager, one of the most dangerous things you can do is one, leave people hanging time-wise. People lose their motivation and interest real fast. And then two, like just sort of keeping people busy with things they're excited about is always the challenge here. From others, anyone else look at this and have like an idea about what could be tweaked to just sort of smoothen this process to create a better end user experience?
One suggestion is on the tasks, right? Could you open it up so that people are selecting their tasks, right? So you're like, here's all the things we need to do. You came in, like, pick one or two or something, and you know. So at least it gives them a feeling of agency, right? Kind of like, okay, I didn't necessarily sign up to do this LinkedIn post because I really want to do Facebook, but maybe I'd rather do that than like Twitter or something. I'm just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, after these like new one-on-ones, I just started like reassigning things. So, and I honestly, I never knew some of the interests just because we didn't have like that kind of relationship. So I found someone in our volunteer group that enjoyed data, and I was like, what? Like, we have none. Please come help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's having the conversations with volunteers has been one of the more interesting things because I discovered things and interest that wouldn't have come up otherwise because we didn't know to ask it, right? So if somebody is passionate about this thing that we didn't either know to tell them or they didn't know to tell us, right? It can kind of come up in those conversations.
Right. Yeah. And I think that to me is always the push-pull magic dance of working with volunteers, which is you want to keep them busy, but you also don't want to make up work. You want to keep people aligned to things that are actually of value and immediate need to you within the organization, knowing that sometimes you're going to have to do something just because someone's really excited about it, even if it's only kind of what you need at the moment, just because you want to keep that relationship going, which means keeping your volunteers busy. I published that sort of flow chart here. Here's the link here. But I just want to really say we're now over time, but I'm super grateful for everyone for joining us here today. I think we can do more things like this. Basically, throw in the chat or shout it out. Like, what kind of theme might we want to have for a future conversation? We're going to be doing these, once or twice a month. In fact, we've already published the next one. So if at any point you've got like, a burning thing, something that's on fire for you, come present it here with the team and we will pick your work apart because it's much easier to tell other people what to do than to do it yourself.
Sounds good.
I really love that idea of having someone bring like an actual meaty problem that they're trying to tackle and then the group helps them solve it as a whole. I feel like that's often a much more meaningful discussion than just sort of throwing out best practices around a tip, around a theme that probably have been shared in a billion other meetings already.
Careful, the way you talk like that, you're going to volunteer yourself real fast.
Okay.
Cool. So for those who are not yet in that CMX Slack, that's the other thing I would highly encourage you to come join us there. There's one both an education-focused community as well as one for people who are just deeply in the nonprofit world. More news will go there. More links will show up in those worlds. Otherwise, I know you have your days. Super grateful to you. Super grateful to Matt or Matthew. I've just blanked on which is the best version of that, for basically saying we should do this and giving us permission to make it happen.
Great, thank you.
Lovely. Catch you all soon.
Bye, everyone.